How's it going, everybody? Welcome back to Emerald City Hockey Post Game Live. Thanks for joining us after Kraken lose 4 in a row, right? This is their fourth loss in a row, this time against the Toronto Maple Leafs. Team came home. Unfortunately, still a lot of guys out of the lineup due to injury, sickness, Yanni Gordon's case of suspension, which I'm sure we'll probably end up talking about at some point tonight. And yeah, I mean, the team just wasn't able to get it done in this one is kind of how I feel. I feel like Toronto left some opportunities on the board. Yes, Samsonov made some incredible saves for them at times, but I still feel like I don't know, the Kraken they could have had this one, right? Or they could have pushed for overtime, something, right? A little bit more than what they gave us in this one. That being said, I mean, you're down so many people. I'm sure a lot of guys aren't feeling well right now either, just because that illness is still going through the locker room. It's just tough all the way around, and losing just is not fun is the bottom line. That's kind of where we're at this point. That being said, still some good things to look forward to. Yes, the losses are piling up and they sting, but we know that this is not the team at full strength. We know that we are going to get guys back into this lineup hopefully soon. And that is still something that we can look forward to. And something else we could look forward to is the watch party next month at Flatstick Pub. You can join RJ on February 13th at 4:30 at Flatstick Pub at their South Lake Union location to watch that game. Kraken Islanders, gonna be a lot of fun, and if you can't make it, you can still join me here on Post Game Live. But really excited for everybody, and excited to finally be working on a watch party with Flatstick Pub. I think it's gonna be a lot of fun for everybody who's able to make it up there. Hopping over into chat here, Ryan, just feeling undermanned and outgunned right now. Sucks. It does, Ryan. It does. It's been brutal this stretch, these last 4 games. Not having Maddie, right? And we know the situation there. Not having Vince Dunn, and we don't entirely know the situation there, right? Like we still don't exactly know what's going on with Vince Dunn, but his absence is being felt so much right now. Just in everything that they're doing, you saw the shakeup of the blue line a little bit for this one. I still just feel like Vince Dunn being back there, the amount of minutes he can play, the fact that he's so solid defensively, especially net front, and then obviously the offense he brings, the work on the power play this year that he's been able to do and bring for this team. It's been a big loss not having Vince Dunn in the lineup. And I do feel like this was one of those games where that absence was felt a lot. And just to hopefully we get him back soon. Berkey was able to come back. He's been playing. That's been good. And then now Yanni Gord being out of the lineup because of the suspension obviously stings. But yeah, I'm with you, Ryan. Just not being at 100% just doesn't feel good. It just sucks. Schultz in the super chat here. Thank you. Appreciate that. If we all chip in, can we help buy a goal scorer? Oh man. It is something that is felt here, right? Like this is a game where if you had an Austin Matthews type who is going to score, 70 goals this year, something insane, that extra goal can make a difference, right? That's the goal that sends you to overtime. That's the goal that keeps you in this one. And when you have those guys that can just generate offense like that, I mean, this is RJ and I've talked about it. What a superstar kind of brings. The Kraken have depth, but when the depth is struggling or when the depth takes a hit due to injuries and illness and all of that stuff, it's that's it, right? Like they still need somebody to be able to step up each and every night. And as you start depleting how many somebodies you have in the room, it gets all that much harder. And so, yeah, so the Kraken are going to need to figure that one out over the course of this next off season. It's going to be tough. It's going to be tough. It's not going to be an easy thing for them to just go out and find. And then you just got to hope that also you start developing some of these guys in there as well. Zoe here in chat, to quote Stratic, a good team gets a point here. I agree, right? Like this is a 1-goal game. This was a game in which Toronto was giving you a lot in which you could work with, especially in the offensive zone. Toronto's defense was getting frazzled very quickly, right? Anytime the Kraken started putting on a high level of pressure, they came in heavy on the forecheck. They made the game played in and around Samsonov. The defense, you could tell, got very stationary. They were not very good at being turned around and trying to figure out what was going on. Kraken were able to get guys behind him. That's how the Kraken were able to get their one goal in this one, right? Jordan Eberle. But it wasn't even just Jordan Eberle down there. It was also Jared McCann down there with him, right? Two guys net front. And the Leafs defense doesn't really pick up either of them, right? And this was something that was evident to me from the first period. RJ and I were texting back and forth. The Leafs defense was just giving so much ground to the interior. Now, the problem is Kraken, you're missing two of your four normal starting centermen in Matty Beniers and Yanni Gourde. And those are two players that will really take and push that down the middle. Their absence was felt so much. I feel like a broken record saying that over and over, talking about some of these guys, but it's very, very true. I think if Matty Beniers and or Yanni Gourde are in this game, the Kraken are able to put on a much bigger offensive push. They're able to get a little bit more going in this one. Probably not looking at just 17 shots on goal the way the Kraken kind of ended up, because the Leafs were doing a good job with the perimeter, but they were allowing things down the middle. And the Kraken just were not ever able to really consistently put on a big push there. And I feel like that ended up kind of getting them in this one. Seth with the super chat here. What did Tanev do to the Leafs to earn that target on his back tonight? It's a very good question. Appreciate the super chat, Seth. I don't know. I was trying to remember if there was something from the last time we played the Leafs. I couldn't really think of anything. This was just one where, look, that was a really dangerous, bad play that happened to him in the first one. I mean, that is such a dangerous thing to be cross-checking somebody as you're both going in fast, in tight around the boards there. You send him into the boards dangerously. That was a really, really dangerous play. And I understand Brandon Tanev being upset by that, going after him. That all makes sense. Good with it. That's fine. I don't know why the Leafs took exception to that, because that's hockey, right? Like, guy does something, it was dangerous, puts you in a vulnerable spot, you get up, you tussle with him, everybody moves on. I don't know why the Leafs took exception to Brandon Tanev being upset after somebody did something extremely dangerous to him. I don't get it. I really don't get it. I'm struggling to figure that one out. That was just odd to me, because it all felt very much like hockey up until that point, and then they just kept going after him. And look, to Turbo's credit, right? He was all game for it, and he took it, and he went out there and he was giving it back, or at least trying to, as good as he got. And that's good on Turbo there. He wasn't just trying to milk it or try to just draw a bunch of penalties from it. But it was a weird situation. And I sorry, Seth, I wish I had a better answer for you, but as far as I could tell, there isn't anything. Like, that just took exception to him being upset after they did something dangerous to him. Let's see. Christian, is this the return of the panic button? No, because of the injury, illness, suspension issue. I just don't think that we can really say that, oh, this is the Kraken struggling when they have so many people out of the lineup. We know other guys have been playing through the illness. I mean, the only one we can really confirm would be Adam Larson because of the situation back on Monday and Tuesday. I have to imagine, though, just the way everybody keeps bringing up, and especially on this home broadcast, you heard the announcers bringing it up, the fact that something is kind of lingering and going through that locker room tells me that other guys must be sick. They must be playing through it. They're trying to fight through that. So I'm not willing to even acknowledge the panic button right now just because of that. On the flip side, I will acknowledge the fact that you've now lost 4 in a row, and that's not good for your playoff chances as you're in this tight wild card race. At some point, you do need to win again, regardless of the personnel you have available to you. But I think a lot of this can be kind of explained away. Although, like I said, this one in particular, I felt like the Leafs left lots of things on the table that the Kraken just didn't go after. And that kind of irked me a little bit. Byron, I see our issues with struggling goaltenders have returned. You knew it was bad when Vancouver stomped on the Leafs last night, and he was like, oh no, what are we going to get tomorrow? Yeah, Samsonov this probably made the biggest saves of his season, right? I'm sure at the end of the year, you're going to look at his highlight package. There's probably going to be 3 of these saves in there for him at the end of the year. just sucks, right? Just added to the list of things that was just frustrating about this is the bottom line. Anyone else getting flashbacks to the games at the beginning of the season from B? Yeah, I mean, a little bit, right? Kraken struggling to score, good goaltending being played against us, even when we do try to generate offense. Again, though, it's a little bit harder when you have the personnel that you have available to you. Absurdly saying frustrating game, but feel like we're almost just lucky Tanev didn't get injured again. I am with you there, especially on that very first play. That was such a dangerous play that the Toronto defenseman did against Brandon Tanev there. That was ridiculous. It should not be allowed. Carl, for a team who's had so many different players score last year, we've definitely lost that team. We're only missing 2 to 3 players and can't find a net. Yeah, I mean, look, this is still a depth scoring team. We've talked about this, and it's something that is interesting. I want to explore a little bit more with RJ on one of the 2 podcasts, that the NHL currently has turned into a league in which you can have some guys put up numbers that we haven't seen since the 80s, early 90s, where you've got Austin Matthews on pace for 70 goals. You can get Connor McDavid scoring well over 100 points. Lots of guys get to 100 points, but then you can also have some teams where they're not going to have a point per game player. And it's kind of interesting to me that you can still have that, like the lowest scoring and production people out there, while at the same time having these guys scoring from a time period in which everybody scored. And I think that's a really interesting thing that's going on in the NHL. I'm not quite sure what's going on with it. But look, this is a team, and look, they still have a bunch of depth scoring, right, Carl? Like if you go and you look on Hockey Reference or NHL.com and you go to this Kraken team page and you sort by stats, they got 6 guys with 8+ goals. They got 9 guys with 7+ goals. Like, yeah, it's just really that you're missing the one top end guy. I mean, McCann's got 18. That's nothing to sneeze at in 44 games played for him, but still, they are getting depth scoring, right? Like they aren't like at the bottom of the league entirely in goals for, although it could be better. But yeah, I don't know. I think this had more to do with the fact that you were missing 2 centers and you weren't able to take advantage of the gaps and space left by the Leafs in front, just because you were missing those 2 centers. I think it was more about who you were missing rather than the fact that you were missing, if that makes sense. Seth, we desperately need our team healthy again. I think we are getting close to that point. Yes. Sean, not really. Toronto was just really buzzing defensively. They were the desperate team that played that way. Kraken just played undermanned every night right now. Yes, it's been hard here. Let's see. Jake, not shocked with the injuries, illness, and suspension, but we got to break through, or all the work to get back in the hunt will slip away. I agree. And that is the one worry, is just that you don't want to let all that kind of get lost just because you're missing a couple people or everybody's not at 100%. That being said, it is just hard to push through that, right? We live in a day and age where professional sports, everything is just so close, right? The differences between good teams and bad teams, good players and bad players, is as thin as it's ever been. Although I know what I just said a little bit earlier about how the NHL is right now. But that somebody playing at 95% because they're injured or they're hurt or they're sick and they're just dehydrated and their body just doesn't quite have it, it does make that difference. And I think that this was kind of one of those situations where you saw a Leafs team that had clearly played a very hard contest the night before and they were still tired and feeling that. And then you saw a Kraken team that's banged up and sick, and you saw that too. And I think that's why we saw some of the weirdness in this game that we got. And I think that the illness proved that it's taken more toll on these guys than I think we were giving it credit for before. Just saying. Let's see. So how did we affect the Leafs? Apparently not very much. 17 shots will not cut it from Striatic. I can see what you did there. Everything's always how will it affect the Leafs? Yeah, it's 17 shots is certainly low. That being said, like I said, we created panic for them defensively. We showed, and this has been the story out of Toronto this year, their blue line is just decimated. It is not very good. We saw that, right? They were giving up space. The few times the Kraken were able to get in there and kind of get behind them, they did not know what to do. Those defensemen turned to statues very, very quickly. They were not able to use their sticks and all that kind of stuff. They really very much relied on their forwards to try to use their sticks, use their bodies to keep the Kraken to the perimeter. Like I said, it's one of those I wish the Kraken took advantage of it a little bit more than they did. But I think that's one takeaway that I had for the Leafs was just that they're awful on the blue line right now. And then they very much lack depth scoring outside those top couple guys. Boy, don't they? Because this was there was chances and that the Kraken let them have because the Kraken are not feeling it. Their decor is missing Vince Dunn very badly right now, and they weren't able to do it. I don't know how much we affected the Leafs beyond just giving them the 2 points, but it's clear to me they're not a very good team. They're a decent team with some very, very good players, and that's what I'll say about them. Carl, I guess we'll have to have a second half to look forward to. Week off, maybe that will help. That's going to help so much when they can get to that bye week and get a week off just to get healthy. It cannot come soon enough. Cannot come soon enough. Nicole, this effort was just too similar to the losing streak games. Again, I agree with you, but at least this time we know there's a reason for it. That was partly what was so frustrating with the losing streak was you wish you could have blamed an illness and everybody not feeling 100% and being tired and dehydrated. You wish you could have blamed that, and you couldn't. This time, at least we could say that. And then also you throw in the actual injuries themselves, like with Matty Beniers, the suspension. Like I said, I'm willing to look past it, even though it is still frustrating and disappointing. Light, hate the loss, but given we are depleted and double shifting like crazy, a 1-goal game is nothing but impressive when he had 20 minutes time on ice. To be perfectly honest, I'm surprised it wasn't a little bit more for Alexander Wenberg, just because, I mean, look, you've used the one center basically that you had. If you are Dave Haxtell, what you have available to be working with, I mean, he was the guy for you. I also think it was interesting, Will Borgen leading the defenseman in ice time. That was something we haven't seen before. But yeah, it's no surprise that in this one, Dave Haxtell, we saw a more traditional time on ice for the forwards group as far as what he was deploying. It makes sense in this game, right? You had a group of guys that are, good, solid NHL players, and then guys that are there because you have injuries and illness. And so he wasn't able to roll all the lines the way he normally wants to, but I still thought that he did a good job with everything there. Let's see here. Chandler, I love seeing the effort they put in, but just wasn't enough. Unfortunately, on the other hand, why on earth do we pull our goalie? It has never worked, so why do we expect it to magically click? It has worked. The Kraken actually, we talked about this last time. Kraken actually almost as good with their net empty as they are at scoring on empty nets when the other team does it. I know it's one of those like weird frustrating things where it's just like, you pull the goalie and of course they're just going to shoot it down in there. But it is something that we have seen it work this year for this team. It's still worth doing. I think the bigger problem was the fact that you weren't able to get Joey out of the crease sooner. You weren't able to really put on a push. The Kraken very, very, very much struggled to get through the neutral zone there. I mean, Toronto did a good job of clogging it up, but still somebody needs to just be the guy who can take the puck, carry it into the offensive zone, and keep it in there for a second while everybody else comes in after them. I think part of it was by the time they entered desperation mode where you're under a minute, you're trying to get the goaltender out, you're just throwing it into the defensive zone as a dump and chase at that point because you have to get the goaltender out. You're trying anything you can to just get out of your own zone because Toronto was doing a good job of keeping them pinned in there. And then, dump and chase at that point, you're making it a 50-50 puck battle in a corner. You're not expecting a guy to hit a shot from 200 feet away either. I guess credit where credit's due on that one for McCabe. But yeah, it's one of those that like it does work. We've seen it work. It's just it doesn't work all the time, and it doesn't work if you're not going to be able to control the puck, right? Like it doesn't, whether you keep the net, Joey in the net, or you pull the goalie. If you just don't have possession of the puck, it's not going to work either way, I guess. Christian, I don't know. This might be the toughest time for a Kraken fan. Injuries, losing streak after a win streak, suspension. The list goes on. I got to think that the 8-game losing streak was a little worse, Christian, just because you didn't have anything you could point to explain it, right? Like to me, that's worse. It's at least understandable. It sucks, but it's temporary, right? Guys will get healthy. Guys will get back from suspension, you know that there is an end point in time that you can look forward to and have some hope. Before, there was no hope. And so for me, that's where I stand, but I totally respect that opinion. I know what you're saying. It feels like the universe is just dumping on the Kraken at the moment, and it's not fun, right? Like, that's just not fun. Um Jake, only one center was not helpful. Yeah, no, you want to have more than that. Sports Spirit, hope you guys are doing okay. Tough to have all those players missing. Hope you're doing well too. And yeah, it's brutal, man, brutal. B, not having Dunn and Beniers is seriously hurting the team, and Yawning being suspended while those two are also out is just the worst possible timing. It is. I talked about Vince Dunn and what you're missing with him earlier. Matty Beniers, we are seeing this too. Again, not really producing from a counting stat, goal, point, total standpoint this year from Matty Beniers. But the one thing we do know that he's been consistent all year has just been driving play, keeping play out of the Kraken zone, forcing play into the opposing team's defensive zone. Kraken really, really missing that as that kind of driver of play, guy who's just able to keep the puck pushed up the ice, create then opportunities for his line mates. That's a big, big deal in hockey. That is the thing that elite players, well, it's the thing that very good players do. And then elite players take that the step further by finishing and adding on all of the counting stats, right? But Matty Beniers has the hard part down, which is just being that possession guy. As I'll try to get my camera to refocus here, if possible. There we go. So Matty Beniers has the hard part down there of being the possession guy, the driver of play. That is a really hard thing and difficult thing to do in the NHL. And it is clear that the Kraken do not have somebody else who's capable of doing that the way that he is. It's definitely a big miss. Russ, can we have a conversation about Berkey? I'm not sure how I'm supposed to feel about him this season. Obviously, I feel for the guy, but when are we supposed to be like, hey, can you shoot? So yes, the power play in this one, I get what he was going for. He made some really nice passes and some plays that nobody else on our power play even thinks about making. But the Leafs on that power play, and we saw this, I know, whether it was JT or I think it was Edzo on the broadcast talking about Riker Evans. That Toronto penalty kill is terrible. It gives you all day long to walk in and try to take a shot, right? And try to do something. And both Berkey and Riker Evans didn't do that. Now, Berkey started to get a little bit more comfortable. He started realizing that as that power play went on. But boy, at the beginning, it was very, very rough. I'm willing to cut him a little bit of slack just because of all the injuries that he dealt with this season. And you got to imagine he's still working back from some of that, still building back up the stamina, conditioning, all of that kind of stuff. The strength is a big one as well there because, you know, it wasn't exactly an injury for a while there that he was able to be skating on and doing leg work and all of that stuff too. So I'm sure he doesn't feel as strong as he normally feels. But yeah, I get what you're saying. I'm with you. He needs more than one shot, right? When you're missing this many people from this lineup, you're getting paid what he's getting paid. He was brought in to do something. You want him to have more than one shot on goal in a game like this. I'm with you there. Russ, power play needs Vince. Agree with that one. On Onslaught, sorry guys, but would you rather take this team into a first round exit or sell and get a goodish pick in the upcoming defense heavy draft class? I'll take selling and getting a better pick. I don't know realistically how much this team can sell, how much people are going to be interested. We talked about this before, right? Like Justin Schultz, maybe he's there. If somebody wants Wenberg, you could do that. I also know that this team, especially if Joey's going to continue to play as well as he did, right? Another 920 save percentage night from him. I just don't think you're going to really bottom out and get a good pick. I don't think this team is capable of getting it low enough to be one of the top lottery teams. You know what I mean? Like, so I don't know that it's really that much in your favor to just kind of throw in the towel, especially when you're really not that far out of it and you're entering a stretch here coming up that's going to be beneficial to you, right? Like the schedule is very favorable coming up here. You're going to have a chance to get healthy and all that kind of stuff, but you're just a couple points out. I don't know that realistically you can expect a huge return, and I don't know that you're going to find a way to get far enough down the standings either to really make it work. I think you'll just look at something where you miss the playoffs by like 8 points and you're picking like 14th. I don't know that that's worth it for me anyway. It's not worth it for me, is I guess what I'm trying to say here. Sean, I've been watching the Hawks, and if the Kraken do not bring it on Wednesday, they will be in a dogfight. So the next three may not be against the best, but the Kraken aren't exactly world beaters. Know what you're saying, Sean. And look, every team in the NHL is good. Every night, it's going to be a tough battle. That being said, Hawks still aren't a good team, especially with Connor Bedard missing. I got to think that the Kraken can turn something around, get something going for that one. They have to, is the bottom line, right? If they don't, then we're going to be having a very different conversation. Sam, poem time. Our team is in pain. We must call up Shane, or we will have nothing left to gain, getting stuck on the elimination train and be left sobbing in the rain. Very nice, Sam. That is very, very nice. I don't know if everybody remembers, if you're a real Emerald City Hockey Postgame Live OG, then you remember year one, we had the dance parties for wins. We had the therapy sessions for losses. And then for the OTLs, we called those our poetry nights, right? Because they were just kind of like, all right, here we go. That would have fit in very, very well season one, Sam. That was very nice. That was good. I appreciate that. Enjoy reading that. Like that a lot. Guys, how do we steal Mitch Marner? By kidnapping him, I guess. If we're being honest, Nicole. On Onslaught, talent disparity is glaring. It was for both sides, right? Like you look at an Austin Matthews type, Mitch Marner, Willie Nylander, all those guys, right? Kraken don't have somebody on that level. Totally agree. The rest of that lineup for the Leafs, though, including their blue line, was not on the level of the Kraken. And that's why I think this game is as close as it is, even though the Kraken are missing pieces. It's because the depth on Toronto is legit that bad, right? Yes, Austin Matthews, he's leading the way goal scoring. He's got 38 goals this year, all of that kind of stuff, but he still is accounting for nearly a quarter of his team's total goal total this year. Ideally, you don't want a team to rely on one person for 24% of all of your goals, right? That's not very good. So I will take that on the Onslaught. I will agree with you, and I will also raise you that this shows the depth that the Kraken do have. Even when they're dealing with injuries and they have guys out of the lineup, they are deeper than a lot of other teams. And I thought that this was a good example of that, this game, just because you could tell that they were able to get some stuff going against some of those teams. Striatic. Matthews had an amazing 200-foot game this game, which seems then like the perfect time to bring in RJ. RJ, want to handle that one?
I'm waiting for less than 10 seconds, and I already have to hear Austin Matthews' name right off the bat.
I'm just reading what they said, what they put in chat.
That's true. It's not your fault, unless you put him up to it. I didn't see anything before that. If you told people to put chats about Austin Matthews,
no money exchanged hands anywhere.
That doesn't rule out a lot of possibilities there, Dylan. But Austin Matthews, he did have a fantastic game in this one. I mean, his whole line just kept the Kraken at bay. They were just cycling in the offensive zone the whole time. And I mean, Hackstall did praise the Wenberg line and how well he was able to defend against the Matthews line. But still, I mean, you look at the numbers, and the Matthews line was just dominant.
Yeah, what was the mood and feeling around this team both yesterday at practice, today at morning skate, and then today for the game, because they are missing so many different guys? Because I got to imagine, you know, we're talking about it here. It's one of those you want to point and say, look, this team is not at 100%. They have not been at 100%, but at the same time, you've lost 4 in a row.
Right. Well, the vibe at practice yesterday, I think, was pretty good, but I think that might have been affected by a lot of the guys who were maybe dealing with things being absent. So the ones who were there were probably the ones who were feeling okay. But the guys were having a fun time. They were joking around. You know, it was a good practice. As for this morning, I mean, it was a really short morning skate that I missed most of because it got pushed earlier than all of us expected because they're filming a movie and all that stuff afterward. So I didn't really see the morning skate today. But yeah, as far as the game, too, I think afterwards in the locker room, this is the quickest we've ever gotten through the players. Like we had Everly and Bjorkstrand, and I went and checked after we finished with Bjorkstrand how long this stream had been going. About 7 minutes. So wow. I could have joined you potentially much sooner if we didn't have to wait for Hackstall, which did take a little while. But yeah, we got the players really quick. They didn't have a whole lot of answers, to be honest. I mean, it's kind of frustrating when, you know, in a game like this where you're trying to tie the game and you don't get a shot for over 13 minutes, 14 minutes. And both guys were asked about that. And I think it was most telling hearing what Bjorkstrand had to say, where he was asked about, you know, what do you think the Leafs were doing? What do you think you could do better to maybe try and generate some more offense there in the third? And he just said, I don't know. Like, I mean, I guess like win battles and, go chase the puck, but I don't know. He really was didn't have any answers for what the Leafs were able to do with the Kraken.
It's not good, right? Like that's not something you want to hear if we're being played. I mean, Ethan here with the comment, this offense needs more of a plan and identity other than slapping the puck from the blue line and turning it over right away. This was a tough one. I had texted with you, RJ. I've been saying it on here. Toronto's blue line is bad. Right? This game, it was very amazing, actually, how bad it was and how frazzled they could get if you got anything in to the interior, right? But to their credit, their forwards did a really good job of being aggressive with their sticks and their bodies and trying to keep the Kraken to the outside. I am a little surprised, and I'm curious your thought on this, RJ. Now you're back?
I'm back.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm good.
Yeah.
We're good.
Okay. I'm curious your thought on just how much of that do you think is the Kraken missing their centerman, that they didn't kind of try to force that issue a little bit more than they did?
I think that's a lot of it. And going back to this morning, Dave Haxtell, and I guess to a lesser extent the players, talked about the importance of simplifying the game, given that a lot of the lines were going to look new. It's something that was definitely on everyone's minds tonight. And I think they may have passed up some chances to really take it to the Leafs, whether it's a lack of chemistry, whether that's intentionally simplifying your game if you don't need to. Take your pick, right? It could be a bit of column A, a bit of column B. But I think that really was a factor in this game tonight. And Haxtell pointed out this morning, 3 of the 4 forward lines are going to be completely new. And they were. And you have guys like Ty Karche playing a bigger center role than what he's used to. He's only played center for, a couple weeks, right? And then Shore taking on, well, not really taking on a bigger role because he barely played. Shore and Hayden both, I think, under 5 minutes of ice time. So there was a lot of line juggling, and I think that contributed.
Yeah, Shore with just under 6, and then Hayden at 4.5. Here's the thing though, right, RJ? Like, and maybe this is too old school of me, but when you then have a situation like that, don't you, yes, you could go with a dump and chase and all of that kind of stuff, but you could also be like, guys, just get to the net. Let's try to get dirty goals in this one, right? Nobody knows each other. There's not a lot of chemistry here. Bunch of new lines. Keep it simple. Just go right at them and see what happens, right? And I feel like that would have been very successful in this one.
Right. There was definitely the space to do it. And the Kraken just didn't seem to kind of either have the will or it just wasn't the plan, right? They were trying to generate offense in different ways. And yeah, I think you look at the first line for the Kraken, I thought they had some of their team's best chances. That's the only line with any chemistry. And it just shows the other lines, didn't really kind of try and brute force it to the net. Samsonov had a good game. I'll credit him with that. He had some big saves, but you got to have some of those that just take the goalie out of it.
Yep. Lots of people agreeing with this one from Ricky. Enough with the nonsense of non-performing centers. Bring up Shane Wright and get on with it. Playoffs shouldn't even be a consideration. Compete for a cup by year 5 should be the goal. Had people talking earlier, RJ, about the idea of, look, just sell at the deadline. Go pick a defenseman in the draft. Get some assets back. Don't worry about the playoffs. Crazy how fast this is all turned around. But it is a 4-game losing streak.
Yeah, I mean, you got 8 losses, 9 wins, and then 4+ losses potentially. This is officially a streaky team now. I think you still got to try and compete and be in the playoff hunt. But the Shane Wright question, really, I think you could go either way, saying that he's the spark you need to get back in it, or you give him the experience so that he develops more if the playoffs are out of the picture. It's a tough question because I think you want to stick to the plan with Shane Wright. I think he's benefiting quite a bit from being in Coachella Valley. I think he's really getting a lot of minutes, a lot of opportunity, and I think he's becoming a better player that way. And in a way that I don't know would be the case here. I guess the wild card is how long is Matty Beniers out? And Mike Benton talked with Ron Francis, yesterday, right? And that interview came out, and it seems like Beniers might be out longer than we think. They might need another center here, a skilled center.
Yeah, and he would certainly be that. I mean, I agree with you, right? We just saw him work through a period of time in which he really struggled. He kind of hit a rookie wall in the AHL, and then Shane Wright was able to bust through that and get right back to scoring a big goal yesterday, 3-assist game the game before. We're just seeing Shane Wright really have the benefits of that. The other thing to consider is you bring him up, you play him 7 more games, right? Then you're burning a year off his ELC. He is still a slide candidate. You're still preserving a year of his
Crazy
ELC.
to think about that.
I know it is, but that is something that the Kraken do also have to consider, because let's say you are trying to compete for a cup in 2 years. That is the difference of him still being on his entry-level contract and having a cap hit of $918,000 versus him being on his second contract with a much higher cap hit for that season 5 for the Kraken. And so I think that's something that they also have to be aware of when they're factoring in whether or not to bring up Shane Wright. And I think it's something we also have to be aware of when the conversation goes to Shane Wright.
Right, that's huge for their contending window, which you're probably looking at 2 to 3 years from now. I think it's not worth it having a player that takes up that much more of the cap, for just a few games, or maybe to potentially save this season.
Yep. That's kind of answering Sam's question that he had for you here, RJ. Laura, put me in, coach. I'll score on the power play. Power play looked rough on this one, RJ. You could tell they were missing some people on that.
Yeah, it did. And Dave Haxtell talked about it a little bit. He said there were 2 turning points in this game in his mind. And the first one was not being able to convert in the first period on power play chances they got. And the second one was kind of that just throwing the puck into the middle that results in the Leafs' second goal. You just killed a penalty off. You just had all this momentum. You unnecessarily turned that puck over. But, the failed power plays, that's something he did bring up.
Yeah, it is. On Onslaught, it's bad offensive scheme. You don't get 17 shots on net while having a good scheme. How many times does this team go an entire period with less than 5 shots on goal? I know it was low event tonight, RJ. There is that thing. This isn't the first comment about the offensive scheme. I'm with you, though, a little bit, or at least with what you said earlier about there's not a lot of chemistry here. You're missing guys, because that isn't what we were seeing from this team while they were on the win streak, right? The offensive scheme was not a problem then. Yes, they didn't have an Austin Matthews level goal scorer, but the depth was working. They were getting shots on goal. I mean, maybe again, not a ton, but the quality of shots was very, very high. I can't imagine that they just lost all of the offensive scheme and they threw it out the window because they lost those 2 games back at the beginning of the week. I legit really do feel like that is just because of the personnel issues that they're dealing with right now.
Yeah, and it's something everybody brought up. But I mean, Bjorkstrand was very clear he didn't want to make it an excuse. And Haxtell said it is a factor. Like, of course, that affects our team. And I think these guys, they really don't want to pin a loss like this on something like that. But we can. We're not players or coaches. We can look at what I think is the reality and just say, look, missing the guys that they're missing is playing a big role in not being able to be more creative offensively.
Yes, it is. Light with a super chat here. I think the hesitancy in calling up Shane was also the fact that he played in both of the last 2 days. Probably don't want to overwork him. Yeah, that would be a good idea.
Yeah.
Probably don't want to make it 3 days in a row for the guy.
I mean, I haven't looked at the Firebirds schedule, but here's what I would do. I would give it this next game against Chicago. The Kraken have just played some really good opponents in some tough situations. If you're still looking like this, and if you can't get right against the Chicago Blackhawks at home after another couple days of rest, then maybe you hit the panic button, call Shane up, but just give the team that one game to get right.
Yeah, yes, that they do. I mean, lots of people are just on board with the Shane Wright thing, but it's also interesting because a lot of people are like, playoffs aren't really going to be a thing. So
really?
It's one of those things where, like, yes, the community's really, really split on whether or not the Kraken should really be focused on going for it right now. Or if they are, then also, do you bring up Shane for this or not? Like, it's very, very interesting. I don't remember a time in which so many people in chat have kind of been saying so many different things here.
Right. I mean, it seems, pretty divided. It's tough, right? Because the Kraken, as I said, the 4-game losing streak, it's a tight race. But also on the other side of it, I mean, they have maybe their easiest 4-game stretch of the entire season coming up in these next 4 games. So I think we'll learn a lot about them in the next week or so.
Right. Definitely. I mean, it is a lot of Shane Wright conversation in here. Let's see. Well, and also here's another thing to consider. It should not be the biggest thing for the Kraken to consider. What's the rookie games cutoff, right? Because you could bring him in, and then would he be eligible for Calder next year?
Yes, I think so. I mean, well, yeah, because remember, we were looking this up the other day for Red Glare, and I was mentioning Logan Couture had played 25 games in one season and had been eligible for Calder next year.
Right? It's 41.
Yeah, I'm not sure, but yeah, that sounds about right.
That's what it is to accrue a season anyway against your contract and stuff. So that's why
not at least 25
slide thing. Yeah. But I know for the other things, for like free agency and stuff. Let's see. B, I'm just mildly scared of the Kraken sacrificing too much to buy at the deadline in an unsuccessful attempt to get a wild card spot. There was a conversation in chat earlier, RJ, again about the idea of selling off and how much the Kraken would actually have to move out at a deadline and how much that would really work. I made the point of, I don't know. I think this team doesn't have that many people you could realistically move out, and the core that you'd have would still be good enough that I don't know that you'd really fall that far down the standings to make it worth kind of, dumping off for a higher pick.
Right. Well, you have three guys that you can move out for assets. It's Eberle, Wenberg, and Schultz. Those are the three that you could move fairly easily. And I think you could get some pretty good assets for them. I mean, Wenberg is a 3C on a playoff team. Who wouldn't want that?
Yeah.
And Eberle's still a very good player. Schultz has some value. So you could sell effectively. But here's the thing, I'll get into a little bit more on the Armchair GM chat, but I've been thinking about it a lot with the Armchair GM chat coming up, is that this is not a team that's built to be a buyer. And I think you can argue the same thing for last year's Kraken. As long as you're built in this kind of depth way, it doesn't make sense to buy, because when everyone's healthy, like, what do? It's just guys that aren't going to have spots in the lineup anyway, unless you're buying a star level player, which I think that's out of the cards, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, you don't buy. It's just sell or hold.
Right. Yeah. And it's going to be interesting. And I think this next group of games will give us an example. I got to think right now internally, if you're the Kraken, you're just like, look, let's just get to the break. Let's get everybody healthy. Let's get the sickness out of the room, all that kind of stuff, and then see where we're at. Right.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, they're just trying to weather this storm. They've got a lot of guys out. A lot of guys still aren't feeling 100% too. Even though they're playing, the bug is still kind of going through the room, and I think it's done the worst of its damage, but they're definitely not fully past it yet.
Definitely. Fusion Mix. Should have phrased my earlier Hayden comment differently. When I say I don't know what he does, I mean that every time I'm watching, whether it's Coachella Valley or Seattle, he either disappears or gets injured. Well, I mean, the disappears thing would make a lot of sense when he's playing less than 5 minutes, less than 4.5 minutes on a night like tonight. Not the first comment I've seen here about, bringing up John Hayden, RJ. I understand them maybe not wanting to bring up Shane Wright, but I do think that people, it's reasonable to point to 4 minutes and 27 seconds of ice time and be like, well, then why did you bring up him?
Yeah, I made this comment in the press box to people around me too. I don't know why you play John Hayden if he's only going to play 4.5 minutes and not fight anybody. And I mean, you see, he didn't work as a deterrent early on. You see what happened to Brandon Tanev. They certainly weren't scared of having to potentially face a John Hayden at that point. So I don't, he didn't fight anybody over that. Tanev took care of it himself, which, he can do. It's turbo,
Yeah.
but still, then he's redundant in the lineup, and I don't see why he's there, to be honest.
Yeah, I don't either. I like him. He's a great guy, but it's a weird situation to be looking at right now.
I have to imagine that Kyler Yamamoto is not feeling well or is potentially sick.
That would make
again,
sense.
I don't know anything about that. I can't confirm anything, but that would be the only explanation to me as to why Hayden would be in the lineup over him.
Yeah, I'm with you. It's the only thing that makes sense given you played him. You basically didn't play him, right? I think he had 2 shifts in the first period. I don't know that I saw him after that at all.
Right. If you're going to give him 8 minutes, I don't mind.
Right.
Like, there's stuff he can bring to a team. He can bring a physical presence. He can be a good forechecker.
Yep.
But 4 minutes, there's nothing he can do.
No, just on the Tanev thing, we had people asking, like, why were the Leafs really going after Brandon Tanev? I couldn't think of anything from the past other than just for some reason they took issues with him defending himself after the dangerous play at the beginning.
Yeah, I have no idea. I mean, that dangerous play at the beginning, I don't think necessarily Tanev was being targeted specifically. I think that's just a really dangerous and dumb cross-check to deliver. And then, of course, he goes after the guy who did it, as he should. And then maybe that kind of sparked things a little bit. But I don't know why he in particular had that target on his back.
Yeah.
Although at a certain point, you knew that fight was coming too. I mean, I tweeted this. I said, 5 seconds before I started taking that video, I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to record every Tanev shift from here on out. Stuff's going to happen. And, not even 10 seconds later, the gloves are off. He's fighting somebody.
Yep. Daniel here doing some good math here to get our point total into the 90s, standing point total. That is, we're going to need to win 20 out of 32 games in the second half. I mean, that would,
yeah, they do have to play at a good pace.
That's a lot. It's gonna be tough. There was some talk earlier, just as I look at some more stuff here. Lots of conversations around Alexander Wenberg right now. and just whether or not, how much you can lean on him. I thought he did good. I know this was a tough situation to kind of throw him into. I'm with you. I thought he did a pretty good job against the Matthews line. Look, that line eats other teams up, and they didn't in this one, right? The Matthews goal, I'm not trying to be over the top here, RJ. That's something very few players can do, right? Take that puck, throw it between your legs, knock it through. You know exactly the tiny window you're going to have to work with. Most people do not do that, right? Most of the time, Wenberg would have held that opposing line to nothing, right? And
there's
so
nothing Wenberg can do on that play specifically, too.
No.
I mean, he can't defend that.
No. Now, we know his limitations offensively. He is not going to be the guy to seize the day and go in hard and go right at Samsonov and take advantage of the Leafs not having a good interior defense, right? We do know that about him. But I do think if we're going to get on him for this game, it's important to know that, like, look, they wanted to make this, I think this was the smart move, a depth versus depth battle, because the Kraken's depth is light years better than the Leafs, at least when healthy and at 100%. And I think that Wenberg was instrumental in trying to make that happen. And I think that's why it was a 1-goal game through so much of it.
Yeah, and you look at the numbers just himself, he had a rough game, but you have to look at the context of the really tough matchups he was given. And Hackstall made sure to highlight that to us. He thought that Wenberg and his line did a great job, all things considered, against Matthews. And of course, he had high praise for Matthews in that line as well.
Yeah. And yeah, I mean, I see comments in here, back and forth stuff. I would just remind everybody, like, be chill with each other. It's okay to have different opinions in chat. Like, there's, especially in a game like this, RJ, like there was legit stuff where it was like, look, you could look at the injury stuff and say that's why the Kraken didn't play better. You could look at other things and say, look, the scheme needed to be better. I think those are valid criticisms. And some of it is just the other team's got guy who's on pace to score over 70. And we don't, right? Like, that happens sometimes too. So I just want to throw that out there and remind everybody about that one. But that's the Alexander Wenberg talk there from us. Because it's, oh my God, like I keep scrolling. This is a lot of Alexander Wenberg stuff.
I will say this game really, again, highlighted the need eventually for a star player, where you can see the difference between a team that has stars and a team that doesn't.
Yes, definitely. Let's see. What do you think of Joey tonight? Because, like, it feels like through this 4-game losing streak, RJ, all the talk around Joey has gone away. And yet, again, it's 920 save percentage from him, right? Like, that's a really solid game. That's a game the Kraken have never really gotten consistently, right? Like, this is not something that the Kraken, when they've gone through rough patches before, you could at least point to and go, well, I mean, the goaltender was good. He made 23 and 25 saves. That's awesome.
Yeah, I thought he had a really good game tonight. And Hackstall agreed, too. He was asked, what do you think of Joey's game? And he said, I thought he had a really good game, went through the 2 goals that he allowed and basically explained why neither of those were his fault. The Matthews one, that's a special play. And he said he almost got his leg on it to seal the post there. And then on the other one, that's just a one-timer that got through. And, goalies don't stop that very often. So I thought he had another really good game. Again, if you only allow 2 goals against a team with the firepower of the Maple Leafs, you're giving your team every chance they need to win the game.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's what you want from your goaltender. Viren, I thought we were supposed to load up and go for it next year. Seems like an argument to do some NHL acclimation this year and not worry about the slide on Shane Wright. It's one of those things where, like, both sides of the argument have, like, really good points, and it's one where you could legit go either way, and I don't think you'd be making a bad call. And that's what makes this such a, I wouldn't say a contentious issue for everybody within the fandom, but one where it's not going away, right? That's what causes this to kind of be around for everybody and why we keep having this discussion, I feel like.
Yeah, I mean, it's a cap considerations on one side, development on the other side, and you can make an argument either way for development too. Because, I mean, there's a great coaching staff in Coachella Valley. He's doing really well there, but you can't match the NHL speed. There's nothing else like it. There's no substitute.
Yep.
So go either way.
Definitely, Viren. 6 games in each of 2 seasons kills your rookie eligibility. How many games did he have last year? Ooh, let me check.
I think he got to the limit. No, he had like 9.
He had 8.
6.
He had 8.
I mean, 8. Yeah.
So if he was to play 3 more games this year, then yeah, you're not looking at Calder. Again, that shouldn't be a thing to be worried about.
Don't worry about that.
but it's something that maybe because it is such an on the fence issue, maybe that does sway somebody one
He
direction or
would
the
win it
other.
anyway because he beat everyone. Think he's too old, and Celebrini would just get the benefit of the doubt for being 18.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. You're right. Sean, missing Dunn is devastating. If 29 and 37 are in the lineup, the Kraken get 2 points tonight, period. I mean, we had conversations earlier in here, RJ, about like, this is one of those times where it's good teams find a way to at least get a point out of it. And I do think that that is something to consider. And I do wonder, like, if you had just one of Vince Dunn, Matty Beniers, or Yanni Gord, I think that does happen tonight.
Yeah, I think they at least get to overtime. And you saw the first game, I think, where you have a real effect here, like a lineup effect, I guess, of missing Vince Dunn. And Hackstall alluded to that a little bit too, because I don't know if you noticed, but for some of those shifts against the Matthews line, it was Brian Dumoulin paired with Adam Larson.
Yep.
He switched up the D pairs a little bit. And Hackstall said he did that intentionally. He said, because look, the Matthews line is so good, that's a lot to put on a young player. To have him out there for such extended time against a line like that. So he just wanted two veterans out there. And, I think Brian Dumoulin, he's a fine player. He's good defensively, but him versus a Vince Dunn or heck, even a Riker Evans who can maybe break out the puck a little better, I do think that's a bit of a downgrade. And so you start to feel the effect of that.
Yeah, no, I think that's the case. It's one of those like, yeah, good teams find a way to get a point. Yes, I just think because you're missing like 5 guys, like how are you supposed to get there?
Yeah, and I do hate to bring it up as much as we do because I know it just sounds like we're making excuses or whatever,
yeah,
but it does make a difference.
right. It's a big one. Like look at our lineup graphic for tonight versus the lineup graphic from any of the games during the win streak, right? Like it is a difference, right? And these guys are they are our difference makers, right? Yanni Gord, because that's another thing, right? Wenberg's line was able to produce and get going offensively, right, through a lot of stretches. And you got to imagine if Yanni Gord's back, Yanni Gord's taken on the Matthews line, right? Yanni Gord's
Oh
line
yeah,
is taking on the Matthews line. It opens up then Wenberg's line to do a little bit more. If Matty Beniers is in here, you're really seeing him specifically and his skill set take advantage of the weak interior defense of the Toronto Maple Leafs. The possession game is flipped in this one because of his presence alone. So many things change just from having
you
those
have an
guys in the
actual fourth
lineup.
line that
Right, you have a
plays.
normal fourth line that could maybe pitch in a goal here or there and really take advantage of the fact that the Leafs don't, right? Like they were like a 3-line team tonight. And so I think there is a lot of those things and it is frustrating and it isn't, yeah, maybe it is just making excuses. I don't know, but it's one of those things that I can't help but look at it and just go, boy, if this team was healthy, this game goes so differently. Like it's not even funny how different this game goes. Ugh. Um, we're talking about Joey here and his human save percentage of 920, RJ. It's
Can't
tough.
believe it.
Striatic asking, were there many Toronto fans in attendance tonight compared to the typical away team presence? I was curious about this going in.
Yeah, there was a fair amount of Leafs fans. I didn't see many during warmups on the Leafs side. I was like, oh man, there's just not many of them. But a lot of them were already in their seats, and they were kind of
Mhm.
sprinkled all around the arena. There was definitely a lot of noticeable "Go Leafs, go" chants. I don't know if you caught them on the broadcast, but it was pretty loud. There was that one time where the Leafs were just cycling in the offensive zone in the second second period for a while. It was like that 2 minute shift or so where they had the Kraken just totally trapped on the ice, that Wenberg line.
Mhm.
And yeah, there was just probably the loudest away team chants that I've heard so far in this building. Overall, attendance pretty light tonight. I was surprised for a weekend game.
Interesting. Yeah, and especially because it started a little bit earlier, so like you have that benefit. I am curious also about this, and I'm sure I'm the only question with this. Any booze when Buble was shown on the Twins wearing the Vancouver Giants jersey?
No, they were just saying "boo blay." No, I didn't hear any boos.
Interesting. Not a big junior hockey crowd, then I would be my guess. Kalen, good job with the camera work catching Gru with the stick. I hope he sees it with the song going. I feel like he would appreciate it.
Yeah, I think he would too. I was great. I was just kind of waiting around, not really expecting anything from Grubauer. And then I saw him over there with some the skater sticks, and I'm like, oh, I'll just record this. We'll see if he does anything interesting. And yeah, he certainly delivered. And again, credit to Nicole for the inspiration on the music. That was awesome.
Yes, definitely. Just going to throw out like a quick last call thing for everybody as I get down here towards the bottom of chats. Stratic saying, I wonder why Gru was actually excited about the skater stick. Obviously, he's seen skater sticks before, but it looked like maybe it was a special model of stick, and that's what caught his interest. I was wondering about the curve RJ maybe
Right.
caught his eye.
I think it might have been a specific players. I don't know who, but maybe there's somebody's like, oh, it's this guy's stick. Let's see what he's working with, and then it just looks like, oh man, the curve potentially. I do want to ask him about that. It was way after practice, so I didn't have the
Yeah.
chance to, but I might ask him about that one.
Yeah, we do need to know whose stick it was and maybe why he was interested in it. That would be an interesting thing to know. And yeah, I was going to mention it afterwards, RJ, but that was good stuff that you got up out there. It seemed
Thank
to
you.
kill all the Buble stuff too. Like it was a lot more popular, it seemed like, and as it should be. It's Gru with the skater stick. He looked good.
Yes,
Should have had him out
it
there.
was I certainly enjoyed it more than the Buble stuff. So I'm proud of all of you for recognizing where the real greatness was.
Yeah, on the fly poll, would he have had more minutes than John Hayden if Gru was playing skater?
You know what? He might have. That was my other thought too. Is hey, they need forwards.
They need forwards. Let's see. A Ducks fan in here. That's interesting. That's new. But welcome, David. Welcome. Look, Ducks struggling this year. Yes, you guys got a bright future. So
nobody is higher on the future of the Ducks than Dylan. So there's that.
That is true. I'm pumping that stock high. Kaylin wondering maybe the stick was Bublé's.
Oh, maybe. Huh. Well, no, because it was. Oh, actually, it might have been.
I don't know if the timing works for that or not.
Yeah, it was still about half an hour at least before Buble got out on the ice. But I mean, it could have just been sitting there.
Yeah. Zoe, someone asked about the skills showcase. Do you know if that's still happening this year? Look, I saw on Twitter, because I know what you're struggling with right now. I saw on Twitter, someone said season ticket holder reps are telling people it's not. So the words are
then I can confirm it's not happening.
Yes.
Yeah. It's not happening, which is disappointing. I thought it was one of the better events the Kraken had put on. One thing I really loved about it was something that everyone had a chance to go to. I think tickets were only $10. You know, it was a really accessible, fun day for a lot of people who look. It's not cheap to get into this building for a game. It's very difficult. And I think there's a lot of people that go to the skills showcase because, you know, for one reason or another, they just can't afford to go to a game and they want to see their favorite team. And I hope they bring it back next year.
Yeah, no, definitely. It's a whole different can of worms. But yes, on some nights, the Seattle Kraken are the most expensive NHL game. Like that's a reality that everyone's got to deal with. But yeah, it's really unfortunate that we're not getting that one. Let's see, Light, you guys know I have nothing but love for Matty, but I feel like McCann has replaced him well. Dunn has been a bigger loss. I do think that at this point, missing Dunn is a big deal, but the possession driving capabilities of Matty Beniers, they need it.
And you look at when the losing streak starts, and it's when you lose Matty Beniers. I guess you also lose Vince Dunn after that, so it's hard to. But yeah, I still think McCann's just a heck of a player. Like you don't have an equivalent of Jared McCann on defense that was happening to be on like the third D pair that you could just move up, into that spot. I guess Riker Evans is the closest you have, but still, McCann's a veteran. He's your leading goal scorer. It's a different kind of game.
Yep, definitely, Nicole. That is disappointing. Really, the only way I can get me and my brother into the building. I feel you, Nicole. I totally feel that. Alan, that's a travesty. We need something like that to lift some spirits, and for that not to be a thing this season is a huge letdown. Edward, no skills showcase is the biggest L of the night, in my humble opinion. I think I'm with you there, Edward. I think that's probably true.
I think it'd be good for the guys right about now too.
Yeah. Like, let them have some fun, blow off some steam after a year that's been very difficult, up and down. I can't imagine an athlete. You're based off of routine. That's how you succeed as a professional athlete. I got to imagine massive win and losing streaks are not good for that.
Yeah, just a day where everyone's just there to have fun. I don't know. It was great. Although last year it was timed pretty poorly. I remember the guys had just gotten back from a road trip and they were exhausted. Maybe that had something to do with it, but I feel like there might be ways around that.
Yeah, probably. So it'd be interesting if Dunn comes back before Matty, because then it'll be more obvious if Dunn makes a difference.
Yeah, I guess that is a reason to maybe just root for one of them to come back before the other.
Yeah. I
whatever
mean,
order.
it's tough. It's a little apples and oranges though, because they played two different positions, right? Like I, difference doing what specifically, right? Like I don't know, just overall, I
Yeah.
guess. The difference in them winning or losing. Um, like I think about
Difference in how big Adam Larson's smile is. We already know who's going
we
to affect that
already
more
know
though.
what that would be. You've got the guy that's his like best friend versus the guy who constantly beats him in Mario Kart. Like I know who I'd be smiling more for.
Yeah.
Um, it would be you, RJ, by the way. Person who I don't think has ever beaten me in Mario Kart.
No, I don't think so.
Granted, I don't know that we've really played that much, so either.
Yeah.
It's been a while. CPA looks kind of gloomy with the lights on. I'm used to seeing the game lights still on during the post game live. Sure.
Yeah. No, a lot of the lights have shut off here already.
It's a very different feel. Let's see. Yeah, Sydney saying I read something about it not working with a travel schedule this year. Maybe they decided because of the tiredness last year to avoid that. It's very, very possible. Very, very possible. Byron, more rest for the guys is good at this point in the season. Sucks they couldn't make it work later, though. Agreed. It's something, I mean, maybe next year, it would be kind of a fun thing to do, like right at the beginning of the year, too, like coming out of training camp. I don't know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, when everyone's should be more or less pretty rested and just kind of kick off the
Healthy.
season that way.
Yeah, get people excited, all that kind of stuff. That's personally what I would do, but what do I know? As I'm sure many of the Kraken building often say. All right, RJ, thanks so much, everybody, for joining us for this one. Thanks, everybody who gave the super chats. And then I was pumping it earlier, RJ, but that live watch party over at the South Lake Union Flat Stick Pub next month against the Islanders on February 13th, 4:30 game time start. Really, really excited for you and everybody else who's going to be able to be there.
Yeah, can't wait. Going there actually right before the next game against Chicago to kind of get the layout for how we're going to incorporate the post game. We're going to have some really fun ideas there as well. And I will get a graphic made for it, Dylan. I've been meaning to do that. I will get right on it so we can just throw that everywhere on social media and spread the word.
Yeah, we're still spreading the word now. I got to imagine it's going to be a lot of fun for everybody who's able to make it out there. And again, if you're not able to make it out, you're not local to Seattle, then look, still join me over on post game. We will have RJ and people joining in from Flat Stick. It'll make it a lot of fun. We'll all still be able to get in and enjoy some of that fun as well. Thank you, everybody, for joining us for this one. New deep dive out tomorrow. So look forward to that, everyone. And we will see you all next time.